Pergunta se eles estão me ouvindo.
Economia. Nós não ensinamos sobre um passado que ouvimos falar. Ensinamos sobre o agora, aquele que vivenciamos diariamente nos principais centros de inovação, tecnologia e empreendedorismo do mundo. Promovemos experiências imersivas com os principais experts direto dos nossos hubs internacionais, focando na intensidade e vivência do aprendizado. Mais do que teorias acadêmicas, você encontrará inspiração para a tomada de decisões. Mais do que cases do passado, você encontrará insights atuais e ferramentas tão importantes que podem valer o destino do seu negócio. Um destino novo, competitivo, relevante e exponencial. O mundo do agora exige líderes disruptores. Milhares de executivos já passaram por nossos programas e saíram de uma posição defensiva de observação para uma posição de decisão e transformação. Agora chegou sua vez de ditar as regras da disrupção na escola de negócios situada onde o mundo realmente acontece. StartSe University. Para
Agora, lá fora, enquanto você escuta isso, o mundo já mudou mais um pouco. Novas tecnologias, novos modelos de negócio, novos...
Maravilha, são 20 horas e 30 minutos no horário de Brasília. Começa agora a próxima atração do Silicon Valley Web Conference. E o tema da palestra é os primeiros anos da Tesla e Spare Ventures. porque agora é o momento certo para apostar na sustentabilidade. Essa atração faz parte das trilhas de mobilidade e de agronegócio, um oferecimento de Patros Transporte e da Amage. Antes de colocar as imagens dos participantes aqui do próximo talk, né, deixa eu apresentar cada um deles. Essa palestra vai ser feita por Marc Tarpenning, empreendedor serial, foi cofundador da Tesla, montadora de veículos elétricos, criada em 2013, que este ano, em 2020, se tornou a montadora de veículos mais valiosa do mundo. Atualmente, atua na Spero Ventures, fundo de venture capital focado em investimentos na área de sustentabilidade. A palestra vai ser feita por Marc Tarpenning, empreendedor serial, foi cofundador da Tesla, montadora de veículos elétricos, e hoje ele é comentarista na Jovem Pan. By the way, inclusive, essa palestra está sendo transmitida, né, no canal do YouTube da Jovem Pan. Pessoal, detalhe, essa palestra será em inglês. Então, se você está afiado no inglês, né, e você quer assistir essa palestra em inglês mesmo, não precisa fazer nada, né? Mas se você precisa de tradução, basta você clicar aqui em cima na plataforma, tem um botãozinho para você ativar a tradução simultânea e você vai assistir essa palestra, né, em português, com uma pessoa traduzindo ela para português. Então, se você precisa da tradução simultânea, já faz isso agora, porque logo depois da chamada que eu vou anunciar, eu já volto aqui em inglês, tá bom? Pode rodar a chamada. Great! Let's change the official language of the conference from Portuguese to English. I already have here on the screen the speakers of this talk. Marc Tarpenning, thank you so much for being here with us and for accepting our invitation. You have like big fans of your professional journey here in Brazil. So thank you, and it will be a privilege to listen to you for the next minutes.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you for switching the official language as well for me. That would be really bad in Portuguese.
And Samy, thank you so much as well for being here in this conversation with Marc Tarpenning. So it's a pleasure of having you here as well. So guys, I will leave the screen and let you two to continue this conversation. Samy, whatever you need, just call me and I will show up. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Mauricio, Marc, and StartSe for organizing this event. And thank you a lot, all of you, for being here and for making this conference with such an excitement. Marc, it's an honor, sincerely, for me to interview you. I select a couple of questions. Let's start. Your first venture was creating one of the first e-books. Years later, you helped create and lead Tesla. Are there any comparisons you make between both investments?
Oh, yeah. No, that's a good. So in both cases, Martin Eberhard and I, who co-founded both Nubo Media, the ebook company.
One of the first e-books. Years later, you helped create and lead Tesla. Are there any comparisons you make between both investments?
Oh, yeah. No, that's a good. So in both cases, Martin Eberhard and I, who co-founded both Nubo Media, the ebook company,
and of the first e-books.
And Tesla.
Later, you helped create and lead Tesla. Are there any comparisons you make between both investments?
I'm getting an interesting feedback. Yeah. No, that's a good. So in both cases, we started together, co-founded both and Nubo Media, the ebook company,
and of the first e-books.
And Tesla.
Later, you helped.
So in both cases, we started together. I'm hoping that you guys can fix the feedback issue.
Of the first ebooks.
And Tesla.
You help.
Estamos tendo alguns problemas técnicos. Parece um sinal duplo entre ambas as transmissões. A gente está vendo aqui. Eu estou de olho aqui, tem um monitor enorme aqui na minha frente. Eu estou falando agora em português aqui para o pessoal da técnica poder também me entender. Deixa eu só ver aqui Enquanto isso, enquanto o pessoal... Eu estou recebendo muitos feedbacks aqui na plataforma. Turma, vocês podem utilizar o chat. Só vou falar em português agora, porque eu estou com o retorno do time aqui do Brasil, da técnica, então assim a gente pode se comunicar e, turma da técnica, vocês me passam feedback. Perfeito, ótimo. Pessoal, vocês podem, enquanto a gente resolve isso, o chat da plataforma é a ferramenta onde vocês podem interagir conosco e a gente colhe feedbacks a partir dela. Vocês podem falar para a gente como é que está a palestra, o que vocês estão achando, se está indo bem, se não está indo bem, né? E tem uma área ali para você fazer perguntas, né? Dentro do chat tem uma área que é o bate-papo, né? Que você fica ali trocando ideias, e tem uma seçãozinha ali que é faça uma pergunta, que aí naquela seção para especificamente você fazer uma pergunta para o palestrante. O chat é para você trocar ideia, falar boa noite, e a pergunta você faz via essa opção, faça uma pergunta ao palestrante. A gente tem aqui, eu estou vendo já consolidado aqui do meu lado, algumas perguntas que já vieram para o Marc Tarpenning. Uma pergunta, que aí naquela sessão para especificamente você fazer uma pergunta para o palestrante. O chat é para você trocar ideia, falar boa noite, e a pergunta você faz via essa opção, faça uma pergunta ao palestrante. A gente tem aqui, eu estou vendo já consolidado aqui do meu lado, algumas perguntas que já vieram para o Marc Tarpenning, e assim a gente consegue selecionar elas. No final, sobrando tempo, a gente repassa essa pergunta para o Marc. Bom, ótimo. Deixa eu ver aqui o que mais. Então, deixa eu entrar aqui na conversa, enquanto eu estou vendo aqui que o pessoal disse, Maurício, fala um pouquinho mais aí. Então, estou entrando no chat aqui, estou vendo Bianca Cunha, muito boa noite para você, Bianca. José Maria, muito boa noite. Heitor Angelman, muito boa noite para você também. Vanessa, eu também estou ansioso por esse momento, viu, Vanessa? Acontece com as melhores famílias. Leonardo Aguiar no Amaral, buenas. Não tem como só ouvir inglês, André? Tem como só ouvir inglês. É só você não habilitar a tradução simultânea. Foi como eu mencionei antes. Você que tem o inglês afiado, você não habilita a tradução simultânea. Na plataforma, lá em cima tem um botãozinho. Tradução simultânea. Para quem quer escutar em português, clica e aí você vai ter bem no fundo o som baixo da voz original em inglês, mas a voz mais alta vai ser de um tradutor que está simultaneamente traduzindo do inglês para o português, tá? Se você é craque no inglês, não tem problema, é só você não habilitar, que aí o som vai ficar 100% integral no inglês. Pô, eu tô adorando a interação aqui, ó. Muita gente me dando boa noite aqui, ó. Evento Nota 1000, a Patrícia, melhorou. Hello from São Paulo, São Bernardo do Campo, São Paulo. Temos aqui quem? Que está em São Bernardo? Rita Reis. Fortaleza aqui, ó, Davi Nunes. Fortaleza, que saudade de passar uns dias em Fortaleza, hein? Estou gostando muito. Poliana, Júlio César, o evento está sendo incrível, será um mês sensacional. Turma, deixa eu falar um pouquinho aqui do Silicon Valley Web Conference, para quem, por acaso, está entrando agora. A gente anunciou um pouquinho sobre o evento no início, às 6h30 da tarde, mas como é que vai funcionar? Ele vai ocorrer ao longo do mês de outubro, sempre começando as palestras principais às 6h30, e a gente tem a nossa área de conhecimento, né, que começa às 5. Então, resumindo, das 5 até as 10 da noite, a gente tem conteúdos. Na plenária principal, começa às 6h30, e a gente sempre vai ter 3 sessões de palestras, das 6h30 às 7h10, das 6h30 às 7h20, das 7h20 às 8h10, das 8h10 até as 9 da noite. E das 9 até as 10 da noite, o time da StartSe e também alguns convidados que a gente vai, ao longo do caminho, ter o privilégio de contar aqui, a gente vai fazer o Conexão Vale do Silício, um resumo do que ocorreu na noite, né, trazendo as visões do nosso ponto de vista, como se fosse aqui um bate-bola do que aconteceu no evento. Estou vendo aqui, ótimo, o pessoal me falando aqui que o Marc vai para a tela. Deixa eu ver aqui. Oh, great. Marc, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
So, sorry, we are having some technical issues. Let me see if Samy is hearing us. Samy? Oh, Samy is not hearing us. Oh, let's just double check. Yeah? Okay. So, Marc, we are trying to put again Samy in this conversation, but for a while, can you continue explaining what Samy asked for you about the early days of Tesla?
Yes, absolutely. So, in the 90s, Martin Eberhard and I started Nouveau Media, which was a very early ebook company. So very much like an iPad or an Amazon Kindle. But before that was possible. I mean, it was really, really hard technically. And one of the things we learned with that project was to start stuff where the technology was just becoming possible. Because if you wait too long, then it's kind of too easy and there's lots of competition. And if you try too early, then you can't make it work in time. And our timing on the ebook was probably a little early. It took about another decade for that, although the company did fine, but it probably was a little early. For when we started Tesla Motors, we saw the same sort of technology just beginning to make electric cars really viable. And it was through the batteries that we learned about in the ebook land, in the consumer product land, where we watched the batteries get better and better and cheaper and cheaper. And as you plot that curve, you see that at some point you can do really interesting things with those batteries, one of which is to make, electric cars. They were still going to be expensive, so which is why we had to come in at the sports car level initially. But it was one of these things where we felt the technology was finally just ready and nobody else was looking in that space. And we really had a mission alignment trying to figure out something to do about reducing oil consumption.
What are the main difficulties that you had to overcome in those days? So founding an electric car company in that time. So if you have to point the main difficulties to overcome and to found Tesla, what would be?
Well, raising money, of course, was very, very hard. This was in 2003. And nobody thought an electric car company could even exist, let alone you could start an electric car company with venture money. But it's all we know is, we're both, Martin and I are, lived in Silicon Valley forever. We've done startups before. So we went to the venture community and found, people that were willing to take a risk, including one of our original investors was Elon Musk. And that was, he led the first round, which would have been seed now, is really Series A at the time, but now you call it the seed round. And he led that round. And one of the great things about when we pitched to Elon, as an investor, because he was an investor for, on our board for many years, was he was busy building rocket ships. So whereas many times we'd go into a firm and sort of explain what we were doing or to an angel, and they would go, that is the craziest idea ever. But, when you go to a rocket ship company, and this is long before he had launched the first rocket, he was still building the motors, he was trying to get the first rocket motor built. And you go we went to his offices and pitched him, and he's literally building a spaceship behind him. So it was very hard, we didn't get thrown out for having too crazy of an idea, which was great.
Yes, for sure. And when you pitched this idea, like building an electric car, So the first car was the Roadster, yeah?
Yes.
What was the price of the final price for the customer of the first car that you made?
So the first cars were very high performance, small sports cars, 2-seater sports cars. And it was 100,000, well, about $75,000 US. And that would have been in, well, we started delivering them in 2008. And, you know, it's an expensive sports car, although for that class of car and for that performance of car, it was not, that is a completely reasonable price.
Yeah.
And that was an important thing for us because we wanted to have this experience where you had a really high performance product, something that was better than the competition really in almost any way. It was also electric, but it also, the price point had to be, you know, competitive. And for that kind of performance, you know, $75,000 US was a competitive price.
For sure. So let's try to put again Samy Dana in this conversation. Let's see if everything's gonna be okay. Samy.
Let's try. I'm hearing you guys. Now I think it's working. Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me?
For sure.
Yes.
So let's try. 1, 2, 3. I think there is some delay.
Are you hearing me? So, Marc, sorry about our technical problems. You left Tesla in the early stage. Did you think it...
Yes.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
1, 2, 3. I think there is some delay.
Are you hearing me? So, Marc, sorry about our technical problems. You left Tesla in the early stage. Did you think it will become this one of the largest manufacturers in the world by that date?
Well, you know, that's always a dream, but it doesn't seem reasonable to believe in that dream. So I left Tesla in 2008, right as we were delivering the Roadsters, which, you know, was an amazing journey. We were so proud of the cars that we made. We had lots of customers who were thrilled to drive something that was really exciting and modern and fast and non-polluting. And we were in this transition of switching over to the sedan, which was really, the sedan, it was the product we had to get to, because there's a lot more sedans sold than Roadsters. So you really need to get into the sedan market. And at that time, I thought, you know, and Elon was not CEO yet. And I thought, you know, there's a good chance that, you know, we'll make it to sedans. For personal reasons, I had decided to, you know, to leave after the Roadster. But I never imagined that we would get, you know, Tesla would be so successful. I mean, it was a dream. It was something that you kind of imagine. You think, oh, well, maybe this will happen. But then when Elon became CEO, after I left at the end of probably 2008 or early 2009, I can't quite remember, that, you know, he had been an investor. He'd been the chairman of our board, and he was the fourth CEO, you know, that we had. And he really has taken it to a level that I just wouldn't have imagined possible. But then again, he also was running SpaceX, which is an extraordinary company as well. So I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. Or, you know, he'd been the chairman of our board, and he was the fourth.
Yes, yeah, we have some delay between Marc Tarpenning and Samy.
Or, you know, he'd been the chairman of our board, and he was the fourth.
Yeah, so let's go from here. You're having some delay between Marc Tarpenning and Samy Dana. So, Marc is going to be telling us right now. Marc, there is some in this movement of creating a product in the technological space, it's very common, like the first products are very expensive, and after a while, they become cheaper. Can you explain for Brazilians that are watching this talk, why this movement happened and why this movement is important to democratize the product that an entrepreneur is founding and creating?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really common pattern, particularly for products that have a physical thing, like a car or a cell phone or whatever. There is definitely enormous economies of scale that are achieved. So, when you're making 1,000 of something, which we were making, several thousand a year of the Roadsters, those were going to be expensive. There wasn't a lot of automation that could be done at that scale because it just never would pay for itself. But when you start making a lot of them, then you can sort of justify and afford buying, the robots to help, make them better. You can also access different suppliers who really only can produce hundreds of thousands of something, but they can do it, really inexpensively. There's also, with the electric cars, there's also a bigger thing, is that the single largest expense in an electric car is the battery system. Everything else is relatively inexpensive, in fact, cheaper frequently than internal combustion engine cars. But the battery is very expensive. And those batteries are essentially the same batteries that are in your laptops and in cell phones and everything else. And you think that is a large market, and it is. There's a lot of cell phones and laptops and stuff. But compared to the market for electric cars and now grid level storage, it's nothing. So an example is when we started, the average great, excellent, perfect customer for cells was somebody who would buy about 7 cells. They would have a couple cells in their laptop. They would, at that time, have a couple cells in their camcorder, a cell in their phone, and then maybe another, couple of cells in a backup pack for their camcorder. The equivalent storage, the equivalent number of cells, even in a Roadster, is 7,000. So the actual potential market for those cells was actually 1,000 times larger than the cell companies imagined. So once they really understood that, and actually Tesla drove that home in their own factory, once you understand the scale that's possible, that drives a lot of investment into making it cheaper. And as those prices come down, then you can make sedans that are kind of pricey, and then you can make the next level sedans that are less expensive, and then you can make, crossover vehicles and all kinds of other stuff, because that battery price keeps going down, because now billions and billions of dollars have flowed into figuring out how to make those cells cheaper and better and cheaper and better. And it really accelerates that process. So you've got to get to scale frequently to get the price down.
Mark, I need to ask this question. Oh, let me see. Now it is Samy Dana. Let's try again. Last time, Samy Dana, can you hear us?
Our last chance. Can you hear me? I don't know about the delay. I have the impression that we have a huge delay, but let's try again. Mark, let's change a topic a bit. Less than a year ago, you became part of Spiro Ventures. What led you to switch your interest from mobility to sustainability?
Well, that's a great question, and it looks like we have our tech problem solved, which I like. So the kinds of transportation and mobility that I was interested in was always about sustainability. That was how we came to develop Tesla and start Tesla, was through the sustainability lens. So I spent 9 or 10 years doing many different things, including being a local politician here, on a school board. It's an elected positions here. So that was fascinating to get involved in sort of community politics and understand how that works. And I had 3 little kids, but as my kids were growing up and were no longer really part of the school system anymore, I was really looking for something else to do that could multiply my impact, basically, in sustainability. So one of the great things about being in venture is you get to see lots and lots of really interesting companies and entrepreneurs that have hopefully great ideas and great products, which will, help sustainability causes. It will reduce our carbon footprint. And by being a venture capitalist, I'm able to invest in those companies and sort of be more effective than I would be if we decided to, let's say, start a new company doing one thing. Now I get to advise and to help and to hopefully, succeed with a bunch of different companies all at once.
Talking about trends in Silicon Valley, is food the next big thing in the world, in venture capital world?
Well, that's a really good question. So historically, venture money has not flowed into agriculture or food. It's been especially the agriculture industry has been extremely resistant to change. And they have optimized themselves in a way which is really impressive. I mean, very few people feed, Brazil is an enormous producer of agricultural products, as is California, my native California. But there are still lots of optimizations possible. So it has clearly become a focus of venture money, not only in terms of traditional agriculture, improving those yields, whether it's through next generation robots or sensing equipment to understand exactly what the soil is doing, to make sure that only the water that you need. We don't have very much water in California, so it's a big deal to get the water only where you need it and not anywhere else. To reduce pesticides, to reduce the environmental impact. So there is a lot of interest there. Now, we also have an entire separate sort of parallel, if you will, venture interest going on right now in what are called alternative meats. So those are things like the Impossible Burger, which I'm not sure if it's made it down to Brazil yet, but it's a burger made of vegetables, but really close to it has a genetically engineered yeast that's making heme, which makes it bleed. It's just a little creepy if you're a vegetarian, but it's good. And along with Beyond, which is a public company now and doing very, very well, and all the way to companies that are developing, sort of cultured meat is what we call it. These are cell lines that produce, they produce beef, or they produce, chicken or whatever, but without the cow and without the chicken. So that's the most sort of advanced technology, and none of that is on the market yet, but there's lots of venture interest in that, as well as, fancier tractors and, robotic harvesters and robotic, ways of keeping track of fruit. So yes, the VC industry is definitely spending a lot of money and doing a lot of investment into agriculture. If you think about it, it's one of the big things. You have energy, you have transportation, you have food, and those are big pieces of the economy. So it's an exciting place to be, and it's a place that clearly there has to be some changes, because almost everything in agriculture is not really sustainable.
One of the most interesting companies you are involved is Drone Seed. You got involved with this in August as an observer. Would you like to explain what this company does? I think it's amazing, by the way.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so I can't take credit for that investment. That was before I joined Sparrow, and I'm now a board observer there. But what Drone Seed does is and this is really particularly important right now in the West and in the United States, is that we're having terrible wildfires. In fact, the skies here are incredibly smoky today because of smoke from these wildfires. And it turns out that reforesting those lands has a lot of ecological and benefits, and you want to reforest those lands as quickly as you can. So a little bit of technology help goes a long way. So what Drone Seed does is they essentially drop these little pucks from drones that fly by. So a lot of the land that gets destroyed by wildfires is quite difficult to get to. It's very mountainous, very difficult to walk through. So by flying over with low-level drones and dropping these pucks of seeds with lots of fancy stuff around it to make them so they grow, it's possible to reforest areas much quicker and much cheaper than it would be if you sent people in with literally sharp sticks that they hit the ground and then they put a little seedling in. That's the state of the art they're competing against. So it has a lot of promise, and we hope that it works out.
Mark, today we live torn between optimistic and a pessimistic think when you talk about climate change. Can we expect in the future, in the near future, technology to reverse the damage that was already done and that is still to be done?
Now that is a good question. So it all depends on what day of the week you ask that question. Because some days I look at what is going on and just think, okay, we're just not going to get there. But we've never had such powerful technology, whether it is through CRISPR and genetic engineering, whether it is for with drones and enormous compute power and artificial intelligence. The tools that we have to solve this problem, to both take the pressure off the natural world and then try to restore some balance, has never been greater. And those tools are getting stronger and better every day. So as an entrepreneur and an investor, I am inherently optimistic that we will get there. We want to get there as quickly as we can and bring as many of the world's species with us as we can, because extinction is a real problem, and sort of habitat loss is tragic, and we want to be able to stop that. But yes, I think it's possible. I think we really can have a world of sustainable abundance. There's certainly, it doesn't require a big science breakthrough. It requires a whole bunch of engineering and investment. But we kind of know we know the outlines of how this is going to be possible.
Mark, among your endeavors today, you have the Clear Path, a robotics company. I think it's a good story to tell us, and how are you involved in such different and exciting companies after you enter in Spiro, or maybe a little early.
Yeah, although ClearPath, I'm an advisor. I'm not. That isn't actually a Sparrow investment, but it's a company that I came across many years ago, and I really liked the team. I really liked the CTO, the technical officer there, and he asked if I could help advise from time to time. What ClearPath does is it's a robotics company that helps automate warehouses, and it's not the big pickers and other things that you think about. They have these small little robots that you load stuff on, and you say, take it over to that part of the building, and they drive over and do that. So in some ways, they're like little electric cars, if you will, and they're autonomous, and they have intelligence around them. So it's very much.
não estava claro se uma pequena fabricante conseguiria fazer o que a gente queria. Rodamos alguns testes em relação às baterias, investigamos vários processos de fabricação, parceiros, e em dezembro a gente tinha certeza de que ia funcionar, que a gente achou que a gente tinha uma boa chance, pelo menos, né? Mas sempre fomos bem focados em carros elétricos. A meta, em última instância, era reduzir o consumo de combustível fóssil. Nos Estados Unidos, praticamente todo o consumo de combustível fóssil vai para carros, né, de óleo, petróleo, gasolina. Então, se a gente fosse impactar isso, a gente queria ir nesse caminho, né? Eu acho que concluímos aqui a nossa sala. O Maurício pode nos ajudar, porque para mim ele desapareceu da sala, tanto ele quanto o Marc. Estou aqui de volta. Há milhares, literalmente milhares de perguntas para você. Eu escolhi algumas, tem uma relacionada à mentalidade de empreendedorismo. Então, qual foi o seu maior fracasso de carreira? E o que você fez no passado para vencer esse fracasso? Nosso maior fracasso. Tem vários pequenos fracassos. Se você mesmo pensar sobre a nossa empresa de e-books, estava um pouco cedo demais para o mercado, mas a gente se virou bem até. Há 1 milhão de coisas que você experimenta e não funciona, e você continua iterando, repetindo. A gente pensou que a gente podia vender de uma certa maneira, não funcionou muito bem, a gente testou um outro parceiro, encontramos um outro caminho, mas são coisas comuns no mundo do empreendedorismo. Então, entre a Nova Mídia e a Tesla, houve um período de 3 anos que eu trabalhei numa outra startup, não era minha, eu trabalhei para um amigo que estava abrindo uma startup em tecnologia profunda da internet, como a internet roda. Ela é uma empreendedora fantástica, mas uma das coisas que foi difícil é porque foi numa época em que o mercado para, digamos assim, encanamento da internet estava terrível. Foi